It's time once again for more FoodSpace. All things food and drink, restaurants, travel, recipes, and cooking tips. There's something for everyone. Taste, sip, learn, and laugh along with us. And now it's time to get into his space, FoodSpace. Here's your host, Chef Michael Glatz.
Welcome to FoodSpace. It's always your space. Today it's going to be a lot of fun space because we're going to taste some awesome beers. Let's get right to it. And the catalyst for today's show was the Kilted Mermaid here in Vero Beach. Does this thing in the summertime called Beer School. Now, you know, I like my martinis, my bourbon, my rum, my gin, and my wine. And beer's my sort of don't drink enough beer kind of guy. So I started going to beer school twice a month. Really fabulous. Rick Norrie from the Kilted Mermaid. Thanks for being on the show, Rick.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure, pleasure. And Linda Moore. Great having you also.
Hi, nice to be here.
You two rock it. You rock it here downtown Vero Beach with your beer schools.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun.
You work the crowd. You work the room. The beers are fabulous. And speaking of fabulous beer, let's cut over to Pareidolia Brewing. Pete Anderson. Welcome
Hello.
to the show, Pete.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Nice to
being
have
here.
you. Great, great. Tell us about the name first before we start drinking beer, because it's an unusual name.
It is unusual.
Not Pete Anderson, but the brewery.
Pareidolia it's a psychological phenomena where people make patterns. Their brains make patterns where they don't exist. For example, if you look at a cloud and it looks like an animal or a clown, or it could be a rust stain, people often pray to Pareidolia because they're reminded of religious figures such as Jesus in toast or Mary in a rust stain. So,
sure. Awesome. My grandmother's wallpaper always kept me awake as a little kid. I always saw faces in her floral wallpaper in the guest bedroom. It terrified me.
Yeah, most people see faces, and that's where our motto, face it, beer is good, comes from.
Great. Terrific. Well, so if we drink a little bit too much of this, we might have a little Pareidolia going on.
That's the hope.
That's the hope. Great, great. Well, let's jump right into some beer, and we'll talk a little bit about beer school and so on. But let's start tasting right away, because I'm like, the beer's in front of me, and I'm excited.
All right.
Tell us what we've got here first, Rick. Pete, sorry.
That's okay. The first beer we have here is our most popular beer. It's a hazy IPA, which is a style that started up in New England. It's called 32958, which happens to be the zip code of Sebastian. We actually moved into a new location, which is the old post office, thus the name. This is very hoppy in aroma, hoppy in flavor, but it's not real bitter. And that's the New England style, or otherwise hazy style of an IPA. So you're going to get notes of grapefruit and citrus, even though there is no fruit in the beer. That's all coming from the hops. We've got Citra hops, Mosaic hops, and a little bit of Warrior hops in there.
Do those hop flavors come naturally, or is there something you have to do to the hops that enhances those flavors or controls those flavors, or is it just the variety of hop that you're using?
Primarily, it's the variety you're using. However, if you put it in the boil early when you're making your beer, if you put it in early, you're going to get more of the bitterness. And with this style of beer, most of your hop additions are going in what we call late addition, last 15 minutes of brewing. Also dry hopping, which is it's already brewed, it's in the fermenter, and you just add more hops into it as it's fermenting. That's going to give you more of the aroma and flavor without the bitterness.
Interesting.
Are New England IPAs, is that style pretty much always unfiltered, or is that just some of them? I've seen so many New England styles that were unfiltered.
They are unfiltered primarily because you want that haziness to them. Mm-hmm. Some are more hazy than others. Some will look like a glass of orange juice. Mm-hmm. But really, it's all about the hop aroma and flavor. The appearance can vary from slightly cloudy to, like I said, just you can't see through it. It looks like a glass of orange juice. And the story was it was initially the Alchemist Brewery up in Vermont that it was an accidental. They didn't say how it accidentally happened, but the style supposedly was an accident in the brewing process and was just officially accepted last year as its own beer category, which is a New England style IPA. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a happy accident, I guess is what they would say.
Terrific, terrific. And Linda, are these ever going to be at the Kilted Mermaid?
Well, the beers come and the beers go. And while I can take credit for the wine list and the menu, all beer questions are for him to answer.
Actually, this IPA will be on Thursday's beer school.
Thursday's beer school.
And this is the final beer school of the summer. So,
I know.
I told some friends that I go there with that we have to come still like every other Thursday, even though it's not happening. And which is one of the great things at the Kilted Mermaid. You could sit at the bar, and because your staff is very knowledgeable, you can have beer school all the time.
Yes,
It's true.
Dave will always give you free tastes and turn you on to something new. And we always laugh about it. Our main bartender is Dave, and the servers just hate it when they come up to somebody and they go, I don't know what I'm drinking. Just ask Dave. Dave just, you got to try this one this week, because if you don't like my beer list, just wait a half hour. Something's going to change.
That's great.
We only have 20 taps, but out of those 20 taps, we put over 200 beers a year on.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's great.
And thank you for carrying all that craft beer, by the way. You guys were pioneers in the area for carrying local beer and just craft beer in general.
When we first opened, people told us, no, you can't open a bar or a restaurant with no Bud Light. You can't. And we're like, I think we can.
Cheers to you.
Absolutely.
Cheers to good beer.
Great. Pete, what do we got next here? I'm looking at some deliciousness in my glass here.
Okay, next one. This is a pretty special beer. A lot of people did not believe that hops could grow in the state of Florida.
Oh.
And they can. And this beer is proof in a glass. I am working with a gentleman who works for the USDA. They've been growing hops now for 2 years as an experimental crop to see if it is viable in Florida. And so this particular beer, it's a pale ale. It's 100% Florida hops. It's got Nugget and Cascade in there. And they were picked on a Wednesday and put in the beer on Friday.
Wow. It doesn't get any fresher than that.
You can't get any fresher unless I'm on a hop farm or the hop farm's at the brewery.
Right.
And that was another thing that people in Florida, brewers in Florida, didn't think they really could ever do wet hopped beers. You can order them from out west, where most of the hops are grown in Washington, Oregon. You can order them and they have to FedEx them, but they often don't arrive in the condition that you would want them to.
Sure.
And so with hops, there's about 60 different compounds in a hop cone, and most of them are volatile, meaning they'll evaporate quickly after picking. So the idea with a wet hopped beer is you grab those hops while they still have all those chemicals in there that you want. It's a very different flavor, different aroma, very earthy, very floral.
Whereabouts in Florida are they growing?
This hop farm was just down in Fort Pierce, actually.
Okay.
And how many different varieties of hops are we growing so far?
I think he's got 4 different varieties, I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
He's got Nugget, Cascade, Willamette, and I can't remember the other one. It might be Cluster, but I've brewed 3 different beers, very different styles with the hops that he got us this year.
Nice.
Last year, we did 2 different beers with it.
So is this the Cascadian Sun Hop?
This is the Cascadian
Ale
Sun
Ale.
Hop.
Yeah, this will also be at the beer school on Thursday.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so this is a very special beer. It's 100% Florida hops.
That's great. So when you get something like the local hops, do you know immediately what you want to do with it? Or is there some experimentation that's involved before you nail just what you want the finished product to be? Or is it all, once it gets into the vat, you just got to make it taste good?
Probably a little bit of all of that.
Okay.
If I get a hold of a new variety, and they're coming out every year with new varieties of hops, I get a hold of a new variety. First, I'm going to smell it. Sometimes people mix it in with a little bit of unbrewed beer just to kind of get an idea maybe what it's going to taste like. But a big part of it is just trial and error. Based on what you know, there's certain data that you can get from the hop grower. There are alpha acids and some of those compounds. They'll kind of also steer you in a way as a brewer. How bitter do you want this beer to be? How aromatic is it? Mm-hmm. Is it better for bittering? Is it better for aromatics and flavor? So
like cooking, there's a little bit of science behind it. There is a little bit of chemical compounds and things sort of working out.
Absolutely, a lot of that. And some brewers are really, really technical engineer type people. I'm more of let's take some of this and try it. So I do like to play around. We only have a 5-barrel system, so our batches are only 150 gallons. So it's not a challenge for me to just try new things. It's not like I'm brewing 800 gallons of beer and oh my gosh, that didn't come out good.
Sure.
So yeah, there's a little bit of, like you said, sometimes you just put it in the tank and hope for the best, especially when you're using locally grown hops like this that they didn't even know if they would grow here, let alone I really didn't have all the data that I would normally have from a commercial hop farm as far as all the compounds. Mm-hmm. So I kind of went with what it smelled like and what I think that style or that particular plant is going to contribute to the beer.
And if you ever sort of fail with it, and it doesn't turn out to be the beer you want it to be, you just say, well, it's a Pareidolia. You look at it and you see really great beer in there.
There you go.
Right? And so you can kind of cover it.
Oh, yeah.
You got all the bases covered.
Or invite friends over and give it away.
And they don't care, right? It's really delicious. Right?
Thank you. Thank
That
you.
is solid.
Excellent. And our third beer, what do we have here?
Okay, and our third beer I brought here, this is also another special beer in that it also has Florida-grown hops in it. And these are Willamette hops. I think I put about 12 pounds of wet Willamette hops in here. They were literally in the tank in less than 48 hours. So these are as fresh as you can get. This is an old ale, which is an English style. I also played around a little bit with it, and I took some oak and I soaked it in bourbon for several weeks. And then I put it in the fermenter for a couple weeks just to impart some of the oak flavor and a little bit of the bourbon background. It's very subtle. With this light style beer, most people will make an oak or bourbon style beer in a dark beer because it's such a strong flavor. I put it in a light beer just to see if I could do that, and I would test it every day until it got to the point where I felt like it was more of just an essence of that oak, because I still want that Florida fresh hop flavor to come through.
The beers really taste fresh.
Yes, they
taste
do.
incredibly fresh, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with using the fresh Florida hops.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in a wet hopped beer versus most commercial brewers are using pelletized hops just because of the shelf life and stability. So using wet hops is actually another whole process of experimentation. There's probably not a lot of breweries in Florida that have even used wet hops simply because of the access to getting them.
Sure.
Getting them fresh, too. Yeah.
Getting them fresh.
Well, how great that you have a
And
source.
this one is called?
This is called Grumpy Face.
Grumpy Face. Okay.
Grumpy Face. Why the name?
Well, I
It's one of the
initially
Pareidolias. You saw it in the
oh yeah,
creme on top of the beer or something.
and of course the Sebastian motto, you know, home of friendly people and 6 old grouches. And
right.
a couple of years ago, I put out a little campaign, a bumper sticker campaign called "Give Up the Grumpy," and it's just kind of like, you know, it's craft beer. We live in a great place in East River County, Florida in general. Let's just give up the grumpy.
Sure.
Have
Sure.
a beer.
And beer makes it fun.
Yeah.
You know,
I
I
always have
get
fun when I'm
serious
drinking
when I
beer.
start sipping my gin and all that, but beer is just fun. But it's also very serious and a very serious food beverage.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's there's over 6,000 breweries now in the U.S. and it's still growing. It's actually still growing.
Florida has finally exploded.
Florida has exploded.
We're always like 5 years behind the rest of the country, I swear, on most everything. But
Yeah.
finally, the number of breweries in the state of Florida just amazes me.
We just hit 300 in the state of Florida. We were the 80th brewery when we opened in 2014. So we went from 80 to 300 in 4 years.
Wow. My goodness.
Nice.
So it is exploding. It's
Yeah.
exploding.
That's
good.
great. That's great.
And I try and always, out of 20 taps, I try and have more than half of them as Florida breweries.
That's great.
Try and support local as much as I can.
That's huge. That's huge.
And your menu at the Kilted is sort of a tasting menu. You've got great cheeses and things that work really well for sharing, the fondue and, you know, the hummus and small bite things. And I've really enjoyed not only learning about the beers at beer school, but also having some fun tasting food with it.
Right.
Because, you know, the first thing I do when I taste a beverage is I think, well, what do I want to eat with this? You know?
Exactly.
And not all beverages are made for eating with.
Yeah.
Like, I love my martinis, but it doesn't really go with anything.
Well, that's all Linda. She's behind the kitchen. And
But really, the food works with the beers, and it's fun sometimes when it doesn't work. You know, just like when you're doing wine, you're sipping, you're tasting, you're nibbling, and you're saying, "Wow, that's really amazing." Or, well, that didn't work, but I'll bet it tastes better with this. And it's really kind of fun doing that.
Yeah, we love doing beer and food pairings, and we're really into it. I mean, we started out a restaurant like, how can I make a whole menu that's just cheese? And then, you know, since then we've diversified a lot, but that's where the fondue comes from. But cheese and beer is such a great match, and even our curries, so many of them are like perfect with beer. I mean, we have specific beers that we cook with that we would never change because it would change how everything tastes.
Sure.
Yeah.
That we've been using. Cigar City Maduro, we've been cooking
which is
with
a brown
that.
ale. Yeah.
That goes in our cheddar fondue. And I've tried to change it a few times over the years. I'm like, no.
Now, I'm a cigar smoker, and I haven't had Cigar City Maduro yet. What's up with that?
I don't know.
What time do you open today? 5 o'clock. Rick and Linda from the Kilted Mermaid, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for
you
bringing us
very
beer
much.
school here locally in Vero Beach. Great fun learning with you all and enjoying. Pete Anderson from Pareidolia, thanks for being on the show today and sharing your fabulous brews with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Michael.
being
Thank
here.
you, Michael.
Appreciate
We'll
it.
see you
Cheers.
next time on FoodSpace. Cheers.